Welcome to another episode of Wild and Well. Today I'm talking to Dr. Maggie Wyss, who is a PhD. She's a researcher, she's a writer, an international health expert who explores the intersection of gender, health, and society. She's also a mom of three, and her work is centered on how women navigate complex decisions, particularly in pregnancy and birth and motherhood. So, welcome, Maggie. But before we get into talking about motherhood and matrescence and the systemic reasons that make modern day motherhood so much harder than it needs to be, can you first let us know something that you did today to take care of you?
Hmm. So we've been having like this amazing weather. I'm based in Switzerland, and first thing this morning, I actually took my twin 1-year-olds for a really nice walk through the countryside, probably around 7:45, like really early. And afterwards, I went to this group, which is other moms with kids around the same age, and the whole idea is that you're there. Somebody else is kind of making sure that the little ones are safe, but you have this opportunity to kind of sit back and like watch your kids play in a way that's very grounded. It's every Wednesday morning, and I love it because you can be there, you can really kind of come down and breathe and be connected to your own body. Like she's the woman who leads it. She's always talking about the importance of connecting with your breath and really grounding yourself and then observing your child and kind of, well, in my case, both of them, what they're doing and kind of how they're progressing. And it kind of gives me this sort of picture as though I'm a bit on the outside of motherhood because sometimes when I'm in it, I'm very much connected to like, are they safe? Are they okay? What are they doing? Oh, they're about to do something. Oh, I need to help. Or you're very much on. And in that setting, you're not, and you get to really be present to kind of this little being and witness kind of everything that they're learning, that they're doing, and in a way that I don't know, it just like fills my cup up every week when I do it. It's lovely.
That sounds
So
like an
yeah.
amazing group. I I want that still, even though my kids are older, it'd be amazing to have that experience. Like, yeah, it is. It's interesting with motherhood. We are often just so in it that we don't have those
Yeah.
moments that often where we are observing it. And it is so lovely. Some of
Yeah.
my favorite moments are just watching my kids interact with others. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's why we like scrolling through photos of them when they're sleeping, because it's a similar sort of experience.
Yeah, it probably
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about you and what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. So I have a PhD in bioethics, and I look at how women make decisions in complex systems. So I did this long before I was a mother myself, and I was focused on mothers and kind of how mothers make decisions for their children. So I was living in East Africa, and I was looking at how women make decisions around their children and enrolling them in clinical trial research. And I was really fascinated by the choices that mothers were making, why they were making them, and also looking at the systems that they were making these decisions in and how those were kind of driving the decisions they were making. And then I finished my research on that and I came back to Switzerland. And I started doing some more research in Switzerland on Swiss mothers. And not long after that, I became pregnant with my first child. And then over the next 3 years, I had my three children. And this really gave a new angle on the work I'd actually done for a long time. I'd also worked with UNICEF and with the World Health Organization and looking at these issues before becoming a mother. Then I became a mother and I started to really notice the systems that we mother in, and also not just in myself, and also in the women and other mothers around me. And I started to just notice like there's so many expectations and there's so much pressure and there is so much that doesn't feel aligned with my experience. And I was hearing that from a lot of different people. And I started to look more closely at the system, just to kind of take a step back and understand it. And that kind of brought me where I am today, which is looking at motherhood and modern motherhood and um, how we do it within the systems that we live in.
That's huge.
Yeah,
There's so much there, I
yeah,
imagine, that you must constantly be learning and navigating that yourself.
yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, there are so many sort of issues that are overarching for women everywhere. So whether we're living in Tanzania, whether we're living in Singapore, whether we're living in Canada or Australia, but then again, our contexts are also really unique and different. And then there's also so much individuality in these experiences that I think it can be, um, yeah, it can be easy to overlook kind of these individual experiences as well.
So, can you tell us a little bit about these more systemic societal reasons that are making motherhood so challenging these days, or even womanhood so much harder? Like, what are
Mm,
some of the main systemic issues?
think a major one is sort of this individualism that we've really grown on. So I think we've made so much progress when it comes to kind of the freedoms and kind of the possibilities that women have. But at the same time, we've kind of moved into this neoliberal direction of like everything is on you, on the individual, on the nuclear family. And if you look at how our ancestors have been raising children and have kind of this idea of parenting, as we call it these days, of basically raising children, it's really very different than the way that we're doing it. And then when women, because we continue to still unevenly place the parenting responsibilities, or at least caregiving responsibilities on women, when women feel this is difficult, they're kind of, it's not, I think there's more and more space coming to be kind of open about the ambivalence or kind of the maybe contradictory feelings that you have as a mother. But kind of the individuality, the lack of support that we currently see in modern motherhood, it's really contributing to so many challenges that women have, and also the mental health numbers that we're seeing. This is unprecedented and alarming, and somehow we kind of assume this is normal and this is hormonal, and it's again part of the individual's responsibility to address this and not actually a systemic symptom of something much greater, which is the isolation.
Yeah, and I guess because we do live in such an individualistic society, those issues become something that we do put on individuals, even though it is a more systemic issue. But do you have any
Hmm.
suggestions of how we change that? I know that's a huge question and it would take so many different things, but how can we as mothers start to shift that for ourselves or at least for future generations of mothers?
Oh, yeah, that's such an important question. And it's so hard because we've been socialized to be like this martyr and to make it look easy, even though we're just like screaming into a pillow sometimes. I think part of it, it's like a mindset. It's really this. I was actually interviewing somebody living in community and really focusing on, like shared, the German word is coming to mind right now, Gemeinschaft, which means, yeah, living really in a tight-knit community, or like an eco-village. And she was telling me about internalizing the concept of community, not just wanting to build community, but really internalizing what that means, which is an openness to others, to help, to offering to help in a really authentic and genuine way. And I found this really resonated for me with what I did, because I remember with the birth of my first son, I was very much in this martyr mode. I was very much about making it look easy and like not understanding why sometimes it was so difficult. And I only had one child, and there were all these people with many children, and they seemed to be fine. And I really had a really hard time asking for help. And I then found myself pregnant with twins. And I think just like the concern that I had about what that would mean for my family really pushed me to open up more and really just take help and from others, and also to kind of initiate it. And I found it was amazing what happened when I just started reaching out to people. Like even while I was pregnant, I was talking to a friend asking her how her next year was looking because I'm quite worried about having like twin newborns and a toddler, and I would be really happy. Her children were a bit older. I'd be really happy for some help. And she ended up the first probably 6 months of the lives of my twins. She was at my house probably about twice a week for a few hours every day, like on those days that she was there. And she'd take them for a walk and she'd just like hang out with me, taking care of them and help me with breastfeeding one, holding the other. And it was incredible. Like that was just one experience, but it was like, it came from me. So this ability to be vulnerable and to be like, I don't, well, I could probably do this alone, but it's not going to be healthy. So basically accepting that and then really reaching out to people around me. Um, yeah, and I think that it felt to me almost countercultural, this vulnerability of I can't do this alone. I'm going to have three children, three and under, and I want to enjoy it. Just I don't want to burn out. And then, yeah, just change of mindset, I think, by trying to reach out to people, accept their help if they're offering it, being specific in how they can help you. And if you have that opportunity, do it for others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're so used to trying to do things all by ourselves, and our society does really reinforce that, doesn't it? That like we we celebrate people who are like the self-made person, right? But we all need
Mm-hmm.
support, and we all actually have support in different ways. We never achieve too many things just by ourselves, but it is really hard to shift that and start asking for support. I know for me, it took years of figuring that out, and I'm still navigating that. I still, when I ask for support, it
Mm-hmm.
it's getting easier, but I still have moments where I hesitate and I don't want to do it. But I know that afterwards it's so much better. And it's so lovely because if you ask for support and somebody is able to meet you there and give you that, it's win-win because they feel so great that they
Mm-hmm.
helped you, right? And then you feel great because you actually got the support too. And it deepens relationships. But if we try to do it all by ourselves, it just keeps us all in our separate little boxes, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I didn't realize it at the time. Like for me, this has been really an unfolding, but I think for every mother, as you go through the journey, you really looking back, you realize you were doing things that were probably quite smart, but in the moment, it just seemed necessary or logical, and that was kind of me throughout that pregnancy. Um, I was really sort of I think subconsciously building up this community that I know I would need to support me. And like it built these really deep and rich relationships actually with quite a few people that I continue to really cherish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so nice. And that community, like you talk about, the person that you interviewed, that community, it sometimes we can think about like what we can get from it, but it's more about that openness and the openness to others and not just what we can get, but what we can give. It's both, isn't it? I think changing
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
concept of
Mm-hmm.
community and how we understand it can shift things.
Yeah, and even if you think you can't be that person, like there were moments even when I had my newborns where I thought, yeah, I don't have any resources to give. But then, a friend of mine who was in a similar situation, newborn baby, but first time mother, would come over to hang out with me. And I realized there were lots of moments where I could help her and I could give her something. And yeah, it feels great. It feels great when you can be part of a community like that.
And when you did all this work studying maternal decision making, like you did this for almost a decade, what did you
Hmm.
learn about how mothers make decisions? And do you have any tips for moms who are struggling with indecision?
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I learned a lot about the complexity of decisions. So I was looking at some very different contexts. So a lot of these mothers were living in rural areas of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania when I was spent my 4 years studying these research trials and kind of how mothers made these decisions. And what I learned is that these choices are so context dependent. And when we're talking about autonomy or individual decision making, we can never look at it in a vacuum. If a woman is choosing, to enroll her child into a malaria vaccine clinical trial, which might have some risks associated with it, you have to look at the context that she's coming from, which is an area where they have very minimal access to healthcare. And with this research trial, there's the promise of regular health checkups, and because the children need a certain level of care. And I think when we're looking at these extreme situations, sometimes we can gain some insight into how mothers in general make choices. As soon as we've committed to our child, we are really going to do everything in our power to make sure that our children are healthy and well. And from the outside, that might look different to somebody who doesn't understand our context. But I truly believe that mothers are these complex, brilliant decision makers, and we really are the experts of our own contexts. So even me speaking extensively with these women, I still cannot be the expert on the ways in which they make these decisions. But what I saw is really this trust in kind of the logic and the rationale behind making choices like that. And I think when it comes to modern motherhood here in the West, I think we have so many things competing for our attention all the time, and we have so many experts in general areas which are trying to give us input into how to do things. And because we want to do it so well, we sometimes forget what we know ourselves. And I think what's so important is creating space to kind of cultivate your own attention, in the sense that you're not just like going from one sort of parenting hack or advice to another. You're actually taking time in nature. You're taking time to just breathe, to be with you, and to be really intentional about where you put that attention, so that you can strengthen your intuition, and so that you can feel and notice what your values are when you're facing a difficult decision, and then move forward in a way that is right for your individual situation. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? Because I think we live in a time where we may not ever be surrounded by silence if we don't want to be, right? You can constantly have noise going on and
Mm.
inputs coming in and our attention very divided. So I think a lot of people in the West have lost touch with our intuition, and it's something that we have to almost skill up on and prioritize getting back to. But those strategies that you suggested were really useful, of creating that space and going into nature and having that time to think about like what you want, not just going from expert to expert or info from to info. Is that what you do yourself when you're faced with a decision?
Yeah. Yeah. I really try to quiet down. I and I really search out embodied connection, because that's where I can make my decisions. So if I have not that long ago, I was struggling with a decision regarding sleep, and one of my twins, like trying to understand, like, or trying to make a decision how we can organize the sleeping situation in our house. And I went to a local service here where you have like these they're like parent consultants, if I translate it directly, but it's a public service, and it's free of charge, and you can basically go and ask questions that you might have about raising your children, and basically I think from 0 to 5. So in the early years, you can go to these individuals, and they're experts, they're trained, but you will sit down in a room and have a conversation, and you can get a sense of the person. And I think what we sometimes miss if we don't do these things, we recognize if this person is actually understanding where we're coming from, who we are, what matters to us. And by seeking out, so if I'm going to seek out help, I do it very intentionally in this, and I want to do it when I'm in the room with somebody, so I can get a sense of if they understand me and my family and where I'm coming from. And then just, yeah, this downtime, which I think we underestimate how hard it is to create that space. We don't give ourselves enough credit when we manage to stay away from our phones and the internet and social media and all these other sources because it takes really an incredible amount of discipline, I think, self-discipline to create that space. But I think it's essential if we want to make decisions aligned with our values and really aligned with our own intuition around mothering and parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is hard. We don't need silence. I mean, we do need silence, but we can easily go without it forever. So how do you recommend people connect to their values? This is something that I think is so important. It's something I talk about with like a lot of the clients that I work with, and I've even written about it in my first book because
Hmm.
goals are something that we think about, right? Our society pushes goals, but we don't necessarily talk much about values. How do you personally get in touch with your values? Is it just something that you've
Mm.
always known, or is there a practice that you do, or is it just having that silence and being in nature and things like that just help to bring them up? Like, what do you do?
So I have done like a range of things. I've sat down with my husband more than one occasion just to talk about like our family values, just the values that we have in terms of raising our kids, because sometimes you can get so lost in like the pragmatic aspects that you forget to reflect on these things. So I've done it like the nerdy way and sat down and wrote out like values and different aspects of our family. But I've also, because I think a lot of the things that matter most to us are sometimes really difficult to articulate, or language sometimes somehow falls short. And I think there, again, this intuitive side comes in. So that it's not necessarily that this is all coming out of nowhere. This is our subconscious gathering information, processing it, but we haven't quite gotten to the point where we can articulate it. And I think there, again, for me, it's like walking. So sometimes with a stroller, because that's my life right now, going out for a walk with the stroller and really thinking about situations that I've had where something didn't feel right, or maybe something felt really right, or felt like this is this felt so aligned with what matters to me and where I want to go, and thinking about that and not necessarily needing to write it down or articulate it, just trying to think more about it and what was it about that, or maybe what was it about how I acted in that situation. So it can be like a relationship with a friend, or could be in my part with my partner or parenting, but what was it about that situation that felt right, and how can I cultivate that? So I guess just maybe giving more space for myself in the areas where I can't necessarily articulate it, but I can sense it, and trying to cultivate that a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Does that
that's
make sense?
so important. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's something
Yeah.
that can so easily not happen, especially in motherhood, because
Mm.
we are so busy and have so many responsibilities between work and mothering and everything else that to carve out that space can be challenging. But it is so critical, isn't it? Because if we don't do that,
Hmm.
we can get lost in everything that we're doing and not necessarily be living aligned with our values or in the way that we want to be raising our kids because we're just going on automatic pilot and not actually checking in and making changes where we want to. So, yeah, I think it makes perfect sense and is so, so
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, and I think also allowing new information to flow in. So, like the values I had in early motherhood have evolved and changed, and probably become a little bit, yeah, maybe a bit more flexible and like open. And I think that's really important, not to necessarily cling on to the ways in which we might have seen things 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, when we enter motherhood, we have a huge identity shift that happens. It happens not immediate, well, some of it happens immediately and then it progresses, right? Over the years, our identity is always changing. How do you see this identity shift happening during matrescence? Like, what was your experience of that?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I I was quite unprepared, to be honest. I mean, I had studied motherhood, I had studied aspects of the maternal brain, But like everything, when you kind of have the embodied experience, it's it can still take your breath away, and it literally I felt like it literally did that to me. I It's something that I think we need, first of all, more openness about in our cultures. Something I really see at the moment is like a lot more awareness around menopause and a lot more discussion around the changes there. But I still feel like motherhood, we have this kind of romanticized idea that a woman goes through like this physiological process of getting pregnant and carrying to term, giving birth. And then once she's given birth, the maternal switch goes on and we're mothers. And it's like, this beautiful like moment you get your baby and it's all lovely. And I feel like that narrative is still really powerful or really strong in our society. And the reality is actually is you get pregnant and you start to psychologically process this information, and neurologically and hormonally all these changes are taking place, which can just feel really messy and not in the way, anyway, for me that's what it felt like. It felt very confusing, and I felt very different, and I didn't really understand necessarily where it was going. And yeah, it was a really big lesson in just like letting go of the control. For me, that was pregnancy, especially my first pregnancy. It was just like a surrender. And then just like the surprise at kind of when I gave birth, how like I don't want to say mundane, birth is not mundane, but just like there wasn't this like whoa moment when I saw my baby. It was like, oh, this is nice. He's here. It's lovely. And it really took time like to build up this relationship with my son. And in it was lovely, but it was so different than the way the image that I'd always been kind of told about motherhood and how you become a mother. It was I felt like I was in the dark for a long time during the pregnancy of like trying to understand all these changes, and it felt just so wild. And then coming out of the other on the other end partway through motherhood and really recognizing this seismic shift that had taken place. And matrescence, it's the largest change that we see in the adult brain in terms of the neurological changes that are taking place. And we just don't talk about it, which is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, it really
So
is.
I think the second time is really different for probably most people, and it was much calmer and much. But the first time I was really blown away, and I'm so glad I went through it. And I would say in many ways it kind of cracked me open, and I found a really powerful and strong part of myself. But it took, yeah, it was quite a intense process for me.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
similar to adolescence, isn't it? Because that's another time when our brain is changing so much and our hormones and so many other aspects of
Mm.
our body. And adolescence is messy and confusing while you're in it at moments. And I think matrescence is as well, with all those changes that are happening
Hmm.
with our brain, our body, our hormones, our identity. It
Hmm.
it almost is like you say, when you're years into it, afterwards you can reflect back and make more sense of it. But when you're in it, you can be in the dark for a while, thinking like, what is going on? And I know for myself, I didn't hear that much about the identity change. I know that obviously things do change, but I had to feel that myself and go through it to really understand it. And it is tricky because I
Hmm.
don't think that's, yeah, it's not talked about that much, and it's not necessarily valued in our society that like that time is so significant in a woman's life.
Yeah, I think we love like this romantic image of mothers and mother love, and we find that really beautiful. But like the messy journey to getting there, it's kind of, I think, a bit harder for us to swallow, and it's just not talked about that much. And I also think it's really unique and it's really different for different um, individuals. So maybe that's part of it. But I've often wondered why it's not more in the open, just like how wild and how long this process is. Again, it's not like a switch after birth that you're suddenly a mother and you're so empathetic to your newborn. It's this process that you've really worked hard. Your brain has been working very hard to get to that point of being this caregiver for this little vulnerable infant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you write about mothering from an evolutionary point of view sometimes, and looking at the way that we evolved as humans and how we're not necessarily living aligned with how our ancestors did. What can we do with this knowledge of understanding how humans in the past used to mother and used to live, and how can we use that to inform our mothering today?
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. In the past, it was really essential because we became sort of these primates that had our babies so close together and such needy infants that we, as mothers, we couldn't do it alone. So we quickly had to become really good at identifying other caregivers to help us out. So traditionally, grandmothers, sisters, aunts, fathers, and other women in the community. And I think if we look back, it's again, it depends on which groups that you look at historically and how this was divided, but it was never a mother all by herself raising multiple infants. And I think today we sometimes believe that is how we're supposed to do it, or at least we are really carrying this major responsibility of being the main caregiver. And I do think we're seeing these huge shifts in terms of the role of the father if we're in a traditional relationship. Um, but in general, I think this is still the narrative we're told. And if we're finding it challenging, that we're somehow falling short because we're finding it challenging. And I think it can really help us to remember that actually, no, this is way too hard to do alone. And evolution has kind of selected us to do it with others. So I think, again, this idea of community, building community, and there's so many things that are working against us there, that it can really be like an act of rebellion to reach out to people and to just say, this is too much for me to do alone right now, and I need help. And I think just knowing, for me, this was really liberating, just knowing that my ancestors didn't do this alone, and there's no reason for me to do it alone, and it's not healthy for my children either. So I think um, looking at that, and I think also if going maybe more into kind of the nurturing instinct that mothers have, also just understanding that this is a process. This isn't, like I said earlier, this isn't a light switch that happens immediately when a baby is born. This is a process. We need multiple different cues from our infants, and we need to spend time with them, and that's normal. Like there's a lot of women who feel ambivalent after birth about their infant, or they feel unsure and they think this is pathological, but no, this is human and completely normal. And it just takes time, and you need to spend time with your infant, and you need to be around them, and it will come in its own time. And I think for me, it's really helped just to understand kind of where we come from, um, to counteract some of these more harmful cultural messages that we receive about mothers and our instincts. Yeah.
Yeah, because there can be so much shame there when if we feel that
Mm,
ambivalence, or we're not sure, or we're navigating that messy time of becoming a mom and feeling that nurturing part of us develop. There's so much shame if we're not doing that the way that society expects of us, or how we see other moms on Instagram doing it. But I think it's so normal
hmm
that we feel multiple things at one time, right? We can feel love and we can feel ambivalence. There's an and there. It's not that you have to be one or the other.
hmm
And I like that you speak about this as an act of rebellion, like asking for support and saying, I need help with this is an act of rebellion rather than a sign of weakness. Because if we can change that mindset around it and say, like, well, I'm being
hmm
actually, this is kind of cool. I'm being a rebel here and I'm like changing things and I'm shifting the culture
hmm
rather than, well, there's something wrong with me because I need support.
hmm
Because there isn't.
hmm
I think
hmm
that's such
hmm
a profound change that we can make. And if we remember that, it can help us stay strong and more likely ask for that support or talk about the hard parts of motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really focused there at the beginning on the bonding and early moments, I suppose, of motherhood. But as you say, like motherhood throughout the process has a lot of sort of contradictory and confusing feelings. Like there's this sort of intense, doting, crazy love, and then there's also sort of irritation and boredom and annoyance, and there's all these emotions, and this is normal. And like as you say, there's so much shame around that, but this is what makes us humans. And we're mothers, but we're women as well. And we have all these other identities that are also demanding things of us. And that's where these emotions are coming from because there's other things pulling at us. And that's normal and that's healthy. And as soon as we kind of shift our frame of mind from thinking there's something wrong about maybe having some negative feelings about this moment or my response to that situation, we can sometimes reframe it and think, okay, that's just another part of me. And maybe that part of me is also important and it's trying to tell me something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, our emotions are there to tell us things. Often we're not very good at understanding our emotions, looking at them, sitting with them, and then getting to the point of being curious about them and finding out why am I feeling this way? But if you do that, you can get so
Hmm.
much information. And sometimes it can be easy things that come up, or other times it can be more complex. But if we give ourselves that time and space to feel what we're feeling, it's so helpful. It changes everything, whether it comes to mothering or any other aspect of our life. It's something that I think we
Hmm.
could all benefit from doing more of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, why do you think that we undervalue mothers in our society? Like, we've been talking about this in certain ways here already, but why are we not valuing mothers or mothering and that maternal work?
Hmm. I think a big part of this is the invisible side of the work that mothers do, and kind of it's first of all, it's not recognized in the formal economy, the care work that mothers do. Um, but also, yeah, the unseen, and it's kind of seen as like, yeah, it's mother's love. It's coming from within. It's just her natural way of being, and it's seen. Sometimes I think it's framed as a privilege that that you get to. And of course, there's many wonderful sides to being a mother, but it's hard and difficult work. And I think because of the society and kind of the culture that we've grown into, which stems from really patriarchal values. So it's valuing sort of the more male-centered jobs and also comes from this perspective of being kind of having the male as the breadwinner and then the woman is at home running things. And I think to a certain extent that traditional view was valued, but it was never valued and recognized in the same way that care, um, non-care work has been. And I think there, again, it's about um, giving women power to share their stories and giving males an opportunity to experience caregiving, which I think we're doing, which I think is great for both sexes. And I think through that combination, so women having more access to paid work, men having more access to care work, and just a general recognition of the mental load and of the sheer resilience that it takes to be a devoted and balanced and good caregiver is kind of starting to change this narrative, this lack of recognition about in the work that women do. Because I think we can't really understand it until we do it ourselves. So I think that that counts for everyone, for males, for females. And again, I think the key here is more shared caregiving. Just anyone who spends an hour with a toddler starts to understand just the workload that's involved in such caregiving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I had my first son and my husband was working. He's a GP, so he's like a family physician. And he would say, like, being at home with my son was just so many more times harder than going to work. Like going to work was like a break. And I think it is nice.
Hmm.
It's nice to get that recognition, to have people around you truly understand how challenging and how much effort the work you're doing is. So I think the
Hmm.
more that our partners see that and really understand what it is like to take care of our kids as well, it's validating in a way because more people understand it and it's not as hidden and it's just women's work or something like that that nobody else knows about.
Exactly. And I think this is really, I mean, it's such sacred and beautiful work when you're not burnt out. It's wonderful work, I think, being able to take care of your children. But again, it's it's not one person's job to take care of young children, I think. And males have this amazing capacity to do it too. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for them if they have the opportunity to work and also do some caregiving or shared caregiving with their partners. And I think, yeah, we're moving in a really great direction there. I think we're currently in sort of a time where some of the progress we've made is at risk of kind of taking some strides back, and it's important we protect it. But I think we're in a time where fathers are doing so much compared to just 1, 2 generations ago. And I think this is really really great for kids, for parents, for relationships, and really recognizing the value of care work.
Yeah, I really do see that
Yeah.
more people are recognizing and valuing mothering and care work, and that is
Mm-hmm.
so exciting to see that shift happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So can you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah, and
about the, sorry,
go ahead.
no,
Go
go.
ahead. I just want to say, I also think this, what your husband was saying about, going to work and having a break from it all. I think this is again speaks to mother's experience, and I think we need more of these stories out there, which is when when you're able only feeding this sort of one part of your identity, motherhood, it can be really toxic if you have an opportunity to work, if you don't, but it can take so many different forms. It doesn't have to be paid work, but just different aspects of who you are. If you're able to feed those, I think you're also able to live and embody your motherhood in a different way. So it doesn't have to be through paid work. You can be at home with your kids, and there's so many other ways in which you can feed these other identities. But it's so important because, yeah, you're a mother and you're also all these other things.
Yeah, and you can get lost in that identity of being a mother. And I think to a certain degree, that's normal during the process, but our other parts of our identities that grow and develop and maybe come back from before we had kids can be important too. And I find when you become a mother, there's so much creative energy that comes with it. So finding those outlets
Mm-hmm.
for that, whether it is through your mothering or through work or volunteering or whatever it is, like it could be anything, can really be so
Mm-hmm.
helpful. So yeah, I like that you say that. Yeah. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the book that you are working on? I can't wait to read this when it comes out.
Mm. Yes, of course. So I'm writing a book on modern motherhood. I'm looking at sort of the aspects of like this immense personal transformation that we've talked about before, but looking at it as more of a public health issue and these alarming statistics about the number of women who suffer from anxiety and depression during early motherhood and what this is actually telling us as a society. So, not that the individual mothers need fixing, but that the system we're doing it in needs to be fixed. And I go through the various phases of pregnancy, of postpartum, of motherhood, and I draw out and offer a vision for a new way that we can we can do this, that we can live in our modern society. And there's so many great things about where we are now, but there's also a few things that we can improve on. And I think that we can learn. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the whole wheel, but that we can learn from the ways things used to be and also the ways in which other cultures or even small niche communities are doing things that can really, really improve the quality of life for many women. Yeah.
So, what is this new vision? Not to tell us everything, but what do you envision that life could be like for mothers in the future?
I think more access to shared caregiving, that there's lower thresholds. So earlier I talked about how important it is for women to kind of have this as an act of rebellion, that we need to reach out to others and to build our community. But it takes a lot of strength. And in your most vulnerable moments when you really need the support, you're not in a place to do that. And because you have to kind of go over all these hurdles, these internal narratives that you have, and also the cultural norms and social conventions that are around asking for help that exist, that are real hurdles. And I think there it just needs to be easier. And I propose some really concrete ways in which we can apply policies and structure our communities in ways in which that's more the norm than the exception.
That
Yeah,
makes sense because we as individuals can make change, but then we also need that more systemic policy-wide change, don't we, to help to fully shift this.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we can only do so much within the systems that we live in. And I think we can forget that sometimes. We have all these ideas about autonomy and resilience and strength, but it's a lot of systems work for us. And I think it's always important to look at the forces around us that are impacting the decisions we make and the way that we parent and the way that we live. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where can people go to find out more about you and connect with you?
So I have a Substack, Maggie Wyss, and it's called Made and Making. So it's the made part is thinking about pregnancy, making is thinking about making and building the next generation of humans. And it really reflects on the systems that we mother in. It's kind of like my personal journal reflecting on sort of the more academic side of the work that I do. So it's a mix of both. And then I'm also on Instagram where I share little bits of um, insights on modern motherhood and reflections that I have regarding some of the challenges that we face.
Amazing. And before I let you go, is there anything that you wanted to say here or talk about here that I didn't ask?
Hmm, I don't think so. No, I think we touched on everything.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here and doing the work that you're doing and for writing this book that is very much needed for all of us, all mothers, and everybody who cares about mothers. And I really appreciate how you're normalizing the challenges in motherhood and how these come from a much more systemic place. And I think that's going to really help to break down shame that mothers feel.
Hmm.
So thank
Hmm.
you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. And also thank you, Hillary, for what you do on this podcast. I think you're helping a lot of mothers out there as well.